Continuing our lessons on the Masائil of Iman, the issues of Iman, we stopped last week in the discussion of an important topic in relation to when someone exits the fold of Islam, or the declaration of someone falling out of Islam. We said the issue of takfir. And the issue of takfir is important for Muslims to understand because of how loosely some people use this or abuse this topic because of the lack of knowledge and principles in relation to it. And we spoke about this last week, the conditions in relation to a takfir. For example, that there are things you have to fulfill, and then there are preventatives which you have to make sure are not there in order to declare somebody a non-Muslim for something they did. And remember, this is the job of the people of knowledge, not the lay people. But it's important for us as people who are studying to know these things. Because how many Muslims you find today online? Just this week, I was looking and seeing on YouTube people declaring others kuffar. Imagine. And why? Because they find something which can't be declared kufr, but they go from there and they jump onto the ruling. The difference between, as we said last week, kufr, which is al-mutlaq, right? Takfir al-mutlaq, making a statement that an action or a statement is disbelief. And then what we were talking about, which is kufr or takfir al-muayyan. You take that general ruling and you apply it to an individual. It's a big difference, right? And even in fiqh, we have the same concept. Something could be haram, or something could be makruh, disliked, etc. But then, can this particular ruling apply to a particular issue? That's where the scholars, they are needed. Because some people think it's as easy as just seeing it and saying, well, what's the issue? It says, the Quran and Sunnah says haram, that thing is there. No, scholars talk about tahqiq manat, establishing whether or not the reason for something being haram is present in the current issue. It's equivalent to this issue. I find something the Quran and Sunnah called kufr, but the problem is, can I declare that person kafir? There's a difference between, that's a hukum, that's a ruling a scholar can make, a person of knowledge. Whereas me and you could say, okay, this is disbelief, or this is because the Quran and Sunnah say, but I don't have the right to go to the next step without knowing this knowledge. So we have to understand these issues, because many times you see when people learn about these issues, they get either into one or two extremes. One extreme is they start declaring other people kafir, because they learn now there's such thing as nullifiers of faith. This is wrong. Another extreme, people, they don't believe that these things are actually applicable, so someone's faith is always present, irrelevant what they do. No, we don't believe that. We believe that someone's faith can be nullified as it can be affirmed, but the Sharia gave us principles and rules, so we have justice. And we said last week the principle that it is not permissible to declare a Muslim a disbeliever except with the proper rules, the fulfillment of the conditions and the absence of preventatives. And also, we must be extremely cautious in talking about these issues without doing our work. Last week we talked about the conditions, and we said the first condition was knowledge. If someone did something which is kufr, disbelief, they have to have the knowledge of that. Not that they're ignorant. So knowledge is a condition, ignorance is a preventative. If someone is ignorant, you can't give the ruling. And we mentioned two ayahs to show that if someone's ignorant of anything, a ruling about the Sharia, fiqh, or in Aqidah, if they're ignorant of it, then that person, you cannot judge them or give the ruling on them. You have to pardon them or educate them. So we said one, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala attached punishment to knowledge. قال وما كنا معذبين حتى نبعث رسولا. We don't punish any people until we send to them first a messenger. So to get punished in Akhirah, you must have first received the message. The Risala, the Rasul's message have reached you. If you didn't, you can't get punished. And we know that's why Yawm al-Qiyamah there are a category of people, 4 categories of people who will be tested Yawm al-Qiyamah because they never received the message. That's a proud virtue of Islam. Because Christianity, Judaism, they don't have that. They don't have this concept. Another proof we said, Allah says, فَإِنِ اتَّبَعْتَ أَهْوَاءَهُمْ If you were to follow their desires, مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا جَاءَكَ مِنْ الْعِلْمِ After knowledge has come to you, إِنَّكَ إِذًا لَمِنَ الظَّالِمِينَ Then verily you'll be from the oppressors. Surah Baqarah, ayah 145. And this ayah teaches us that if knowledge comes to someone, to which then they go against that knowledge, then Allah called them the ظالمين, the oppressors. So you can understand the opposite. If someone didn't receive the knowledge about something in particular, then they fell into it. You can't make the ruling and call them a zalim, kafir, fasiq, mubtadi'. No. You can't use these words, wicked one, oppressor, deviant, because you must ensure that the person has the knowledge. Now, of course, we're not talking about the chapter of innovation. We're talking about the chapter of takfir, disbelief. Because the scholars talk about these two chapters as being slightly different. There's difference between the declaration of something and someone as an innovator and disbelief. It's two different chapters. So we're not going to equate them. There are some differences. Here we're talking about takfir, taking someone out of Islam. And as Muslims, we're not supposed to take that lightly. Never. Because of the hadith, قال عليه الصلاة والسلام, أيما رجل, any man who says, لأخيه, to his brother, يا كافر, O disbeliever, فَقَدْ بَاءَ بِهَا أَحَدُهُمَا, one of the two will get the sin. One of the two are going to get the sin. Either the person is a kafir, as you said, or you get the sin of that. You fall into a major sin yourself by declaring that person a kafir. So this is why this topic is serious, because we don't want to be taking it outside of its parameters. At the same time, we also need to know about it so we don't have a false understanding of Islam. So scholars, when they talk about knowledge, they say then a preventative of knowledge, of declaring someone a kafir, is ignorance. And this is where the question now comes, what does that mean? What does it mean? So let's talk about that. Ignorance, we said, the scholars have agreed, Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah have agreed, that there is such thing called a difference, the excuse of ignorance. Udhr bil jahl exists in the Sharia. There is such thing as people being pardoned due to being ignorant. Where the Ahl Sunnah, the scholars differed, was to the extent of that ignorance. What does that look like? And does it exist in today's time? This was a discussion amongst the scholars. So no one doubts that if someone never heard about Rasulullah, that person is going to be tested Yawm al-Qiyamah. The question is, after the Prophet was sent, after Islam has been complete, after today's with technology and the internet, are there people like this? That's the question where the scholars differed. Scholars also differed to what the meaning of ignorance means. There's a difference between someone who's lazy and didn't want to learn, and someone who went out to go and learn and then got it wrong or never actually couldn't find a teacher who can teach them. So there's a difference there. But before going there, we must understand the scope of the conversation. Why the scholars differed? They didn't differ on the concept, they differ on the details of it. Does it still exist after the Prophet passed away? Or does it exist in today's time with modern communication? And the scholars have both views, Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. So, since the scholars differed, some scholars would say there's no more udhr bil jahl. If the knowledge now is widespread, someone has to know about Islam. Another group of scholars say no, as long as there are people who got the wrong message of Islam or didn't have access to the correct information without being negligent, then there is still udhr bil jahl. There's still an excuse for ignorance. Like for example, you may find someone in this 21st century who still doesn't know who Rasulullah is. Right? It's possible. In fact, not Amazon rainforest, I'm not talking about that only. I'm talking within the city, someone whose understanding of Islam is very wrong. And you say, well, where did you get this from? And do you get it from CNN and Fox News? Is that person ma'dhur? Some scholars say yes. If he only has the distorted version of Islam. You see, brothers, some people, they live in a small town, everyone says the same thing. No da'iyah came to them of recent. All they hear is Islam is bad. So there is some scholars, yes. And we have to understand this. Why? Because scholars amongst Ahl Sunnah differed. That helps us also to understand that there's a scope of differing there. So here we learn that the difference, the argument of ignorance exists, but the scope of it and the extent scholars slightly differed. But what we do need to be careful of is not ignoring the fact that there's a difference between ignorant and negligent. This we have to understand. So now what happens when people hear about this, they say, okay, in that case, there's lots of people who are excused. Not so fast. Some people are negligent, not ignorant. Means in the masjid there's a class. Online there's the answer. But he never checked. She never checked. They don't want to check. They can, but they don't want to. Is that person ignorant? No, they're negligent. So Imam al-Gharafi, rahimahullah, Maliki, he said, there's a difference in the Sharia between ignorant and the one who is negligent. And the tafriq, mufarrit, he's just a lazy or negligent. So if someone is negligent, like for example, let's say he lives in a community, Tawheed and Islam is being taught, innovation is being warned against, classes are going on, yet they did not learn from those things. They didn't attend the class to learn the conditions of prayer. And then they prayed poorly. They can't say, I'm ignorant. No. Did you have access to knowledge? Was it easy for you to get it? Versus somebody who was ignorant, not negligent, because there was no access to that knowledge, or very difficult, or the one who was teaching was wrong too, give the wrong information. And that happens, right? Because lay people may go to a scholar, what they deem a scholar, and say, what's the ruling on this? And he told them something which is wrong. He said, that person liable? He asked the person of knowledge, but that guy is wrong too. So the difference between these scenarios. Today, we must be careful, brothers. If someone has access but is negligent, he's not jahil. He's from those who do i'rad. He's mu'rid. وَالَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا عَمَّا أُنذِرُوا مُعْرِضُونَ. He's doing i'rad. Scholars say he's turning away from knowledge. Okay, and now I've gone to Hadith Bukhari and Muslim now to show you this. So what I'm saying here, someone who's ignorant means he didn't have access. He didn't actually think. There's another thing you can add to it. First, he didn't have access to the knowledge. So there's no one to teach him. He didn't know. Number two, maybe it never crossed his mind what he's doing is wrong. For example, his salah is not good, but he never doubted or thought for once that this salah is invalid. It's very different than someone who got shak. I said, I don't know, this salah, I don't know if it's right. I just ignored it and said, I don't care, I'm just going to keep going. You see, some of us are like that. Something comes to your head, is this haram? You used to pretend like you never got that doubt. If it came to your head, you're not jahil now. Now you have to go. You're liable to go and ask about it. And many people, they do this on purpose. They say, I don't want to ask because they'll find out it's going to be haram. What do you want to find out Yawm al-Qiyamah? You're in trouble? You see, you don't want to find now, so you want to find out Yawm al-Qiyamah? And this shows you, brothers and sisters, some people, they're walking around, they're not jahil. It's tajahul, you're pretending, I don't know, I never heard. So some ulama say the second one is, it didn't cross your mind at all. This person actually, genuinely never thought this was wrong. It's very different, someone who, had that doubt. And then we mentioned then, this ignorant person. And then the second category is the person who had access to knowledge, or this person doubted, so he has access, but he's not attending the classes, he's not taking the means on the internet or seeking out a teacher or something. Number two, that person, something crossed his mind, scholars say. For example, he had a doubt, is this halal or haram, and he just ignored it. You're liable now. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has rahmah, He brought that to you so you can learn. And that's why it's important to come to classes, brothers and sisters, and study. Why? Because how many things we don't know that we need to know. So some people are sitting back like everything's fine. I don't have to learn. You should be coming to class so you can learn some things you don't know to ensure that you're not falling short. But if that person, something crossed his mind, or he had the ability to be questioning about that after that doubt came, and he didn't take that action, he's liable. And then we also mentioned, we said the first one, the one who just turned away from the classes altogether, doesn't attend. So these two, for example, someone not coming to the classes or attending the lessons which help teach him the deen, the tawheed, the aqeedah, the basics, salah, etc. And someone who had a doubt, something came to cross his mind, he needed to ask about it but ignored it. This is negligence. Negligent. This person is not like the first person who's ignorant. And the Sharia differentiated between both. Example now for both. The one who's ignorant hadith of the man who prayed poorly. Okay, look at this hadith. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam saw him praying in his masjid. And the Prophet told him to come and said, Irja' fasalli fa innaka lam tusalli. Go back and pray, you didn't pray. The man is living in what time, guys? Time of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Abu Bakr, Umar, the Shaykhain are alive, and the Imma are alive. Yet, he didn't know how to pray properly. There's a good proof to show that the idea of udhr al-jahl is not when knowledge is widespread. It's not the strongest view. Why? Because look, if some scholars say, if knowledge is widespread, there's no udhr al-jahl. But look, he's in Zaman Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and he couldn't pray properly. Imagine, other Sahaba, they're praying the whole time, right? So this shows you maybe what's the difference? He didn't know any better. Or, the way he prayed, like he said, Ya Rasulullah, I don't know any better than this. He never thought the way he prayed was wrong. Because the Prophet taught him there's something called tumanina, tranquility in prayer. So, see, he was excused in that time period, the blessed time. So this is possible. Someone is in the masjid, you can't say, Akhi, you can't do that. He probably might say, I never heard in my life. Can you say, Astaghfirullah, why you don't know? No, you can't. You never heard? You never heard about it? No one taught you this? No? Then you're just excused. And again, we'll also hope that he didn't have access to the information to be able to go and learn it. Because there's many people like this. Brothers and sisters, are we going to kid ourselves? In our own city, within our masajid, there are people who don't know some basics. Many masajid, you'll be shocked. You come to masjid every day, maybe that person. You told him this, he never heard. So we need to also be conscious of that. So that shows there's such thing as ignorance. If someone was in a period of knowledge or place with his access, but he never thought what he was doing was wrong. Versus the second category, the one who is negligent of something, but at the same time, the access to information is there, he never took it. Hadith, Bukhari and Muslim, جاء ثلاث نفر 3 men came to the Masjid of Rasulullah. Many of us, we heard this hadith. Hadith Abu Qaadir al-Laythi. So when they came to the Masjid, one of them, he came to the front. One of them, he got shy and sat in the back. And one of them just walked away. Huh? You guys heard this hadith? One of them didn't come to the front to learn. The other one who was sat with the space in the back, was shy to come in front. Another one just walked away. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam ended the halaqah. He said, I'm going to inform you about these 3. The one who came forward, Allah came nearer to him. Right? So he came close to the ilm. He wanted to learn. He saw a lesson. He came. That's how it should be. When you see the durus going on, someone's teaching beneficial knowledge, you sit down and benefit. The second one, he got shy because the crowd was big. He wanted to find a place in the back. Allah was shy of him. Allahu Akbar. And the third one, this is the shahid. He turned away, Allah turned away from him. What did he do? He turned away from the lesson. He used to walk away. Allah turned away from him. That shows that it's liable. If the knowledge is going on, and material knowledge is beneficial knowledge, which some things you need access, and you need it to benefit from, and you're not attending. You see, brothers and sisters, sometimes we have to also be careful, because in our head, many of us think, I'm ignorant. So ignorant people study. Why are you not studying? Because in the head, I'm ignorant. So we never heard someone who's ignorant who doesn't study. So be careful. So we differentiate between two to give the reality that there's difference between one who's negligent and one who's ignorant. So we cannot just jump to the conclusion everyone who's ignorant is negligent, and everyone who's negligent immediately is like that. We have to assess. So the ulama, they mentioned that's a preventative, and they also get into the details now. What do you do when you find someone like this? He fell into kufr, disbelief. He said something or did something of disbelief. Scholars are going to analyze, is this person ignorant of this ruling or not? That's what they're going to analyze. Is he negligent or is he ignorant? And then they're going to make the ruling. Okay? And when scholars now talk about the person ignorant, how do you teach them? You do something, when it comes to Bab al-Takfir, it's something called Iqama hujjah, establish the proof. So let's say someone came and he did something like this act of disbelief. We take him to the side and say, brother, this action, are you aware this action is disbelief? Allah said, Rasulullah said, you explain it to him. This is called Iqama hujjah, establishing the proof. And establishing the proof means you let the person know what he's doing is kufr. You show him. Next, you have to also make sure that he understands what that proof is. It's called Fahmul Hujjah. So Iqamah Hujjah is you present the evidence. Number 2, Fahmul Hujjah. He has to understand the evidence. Now Fahmul Hujjah, understanding evidence, is where people get confused. What does that mean? It means someone comes to you, you tell them, this is shirk, and this is not allowed. Here Allah said this, Messenger said this, Sahaba did that. He heard it from you. You told him in the language he understands. You told him in a simple way. That's called Fahm al-Hujjah. You made him understand the evidences. Fahm al-Hujjah doesn't mean he has to agree with you. Okay? It's very important, because some people say Fahm al-Hujjah is complicated because the guy he may argue with you. No, he doesn't have to agree with you. He could be himself misguided, but you established the proof. You told him in a way he can understand. So Shaykh Salih al-Shaykh mentioned that point, that it can also be the fact that it's not a condition for him to agree with you. It's a condition that he knows. And why is it important? Because the person deviants, he's not going to take your hujjah. He's going to bring another one. And that's another problem. You go and you argue with him, and he brings you something else. Confuse you now. You see? So you went to go establish proof, now you say he's going to establish proof on you. And then both of you now might be in an argument. So what you scholars mentioned, it doesn't matter if he agrees with you, as long as you presented the truth. However, what we have to be careful of, brothers and sisters, is that are we able to communicate this? We must also ask ourselves a question, are we doing a good job at communicating the proof? Or are we just saying to someone, Allah said, Messenger said in Arabic, and the person doesn't speak Arabic? Scholars say that's not a comment to hujjah. He didn't understand you. Or you told them in a way that is too complicated. It's simple, make it easy. Why is it wrong? Explain it. And then you could say established it. Now, of course, this is the job of people of knowledge, because if I go to do the Iqamah hujjah, establish proof, I don't know the proof. Okay, I go and first I should not say anything, go find out the proof. I have to make sure I know what I'm talking about. So that's the first one. When it comes to knowledge, you have to be aware of the kufr. Versus someone who's ignorant, not negligent. Something else to finish on this. Scholars, they say the excuse for the ignorance applies to all acts of kufr. Yes, shirk included, and other types, major, minor. However, they exempted two actions which there's no udhr bil-jahl, there's no excuse. Number 1, making fun of the deen, mocking the deen, istihza' deen. Istihza', making fun of the deen, there's no excuse. Okay, it's very important. These are exceptions. There's no excuse for making fun of the deen. And number 2, sabbullah wa rasulih, cursing Allah and His Messenger, alayhi salatu wasalam. No excuse for udhr bil-jahl. Now someone would scratch their head and say, why these two are exempted and shirk was not? It's interesting, right? Shirk is someone literally out of ignorance, prostrate to the idol, ignorantly. It can be explained to but someone said something bad about Allah, na'udhu billah, or make fun of the deen. That's why we know in the Nawaqid Islam is there, it stays down, right? They're making fun. Allah said, La ta'tadhiru, don't make any excuses. So a lot of people, they scratch their head. Why no udhr there? And udhr and shirk. Scholars, they explain the wisdom. It's very important. So the two which are exempted are what? Cursing Allah's messenger. And number 1, 2, making fun of the deen. And making fun of the deen. For example, make fun of the salah, the niqab, the hijab. And of course, nobody of Iman will do that. Okay, but that's because someone could say, I'm joking. That's what they say. We're just joking around. Allah said, La ta'tadiru, don't make excuses. You disbelieved after believing. So what's the why are these two exempted? Scholars say because these two actions come from a different place than the one who does something of shirk and kufr out of ignorance. The one who does something out of ignorance, where did his mistake come from? He never knew that this particular action that he's doing is shirk, and therefore it negates the transcending Allah or giving Allah His right. So when someone does shirk, what is the mistake he's making? He's associating Allah's right with another person, a partner. That's a mistake. The person didn't know this was exclusive for Allah, or he was ignorant of that. Or he did the action and he fell short of the tanzih, the transcendency for Allah. So this act belongs only to Allah. The one who curses Allah and His Messenger. The one who makes fun of deen. There's no confusion about tanzih. That's coming out of a place of disbelief. Because someone who makes fun of the deen, he's not confused whether or not he's allowed to make fun of deen or not. There's nobody who's going to say, I'm a believer of any faith and I make fun of my faith. It only comes out of a heart of disbelief, they say. Because that person, his disbelief or his actions stem from where? Somebody who's saying something out of disrespect for his religion. Versus the person over there, he didn't know this was part of disrespecting Allah or not honoring Allah. That shirk, he didn't know that action was a bad thing towards Allah. You see, it's two different starting points. So imagine someone's making fun of Rasulullah ﷺ and he says, I'm a Muslim. How is that a person a Muslim? He was making fun of something which he's supposed to love. His heart loves it, but now he's making fun of it. So really he doesn't love it. Versus someone who did an act of shirk, when told, this is shirk, he says, SubhanAllah, I never knew. Because his intention was not to do this. Hopefully he was ignorant. He wanted to exonerate Allah, but he didn't know this particular action is one of the things that doesn't do that. So there's different starting points, the scholars say. So what's important from this? Two things are not exempted, and that's a principle. Cursing Allah's messenger and making fun of the deen. And the reason why scholars mention this is so that you know that some things are not ignorance anymore, they're way farther. So the benefit we take from this first one, when you find someone who did something like this, of a mistake or ignorance, what's our job? First, if we're qualified, we're knowledgeable, we have to do what? Go and do the Iqama to Hujjah, establishing the proof, make him understand the proof. Not calling him kafir and walking away. You see, this is what people want to do. You want to make the hukm without doing the hard work. Do the heavy lifting. Explain this person. Because we're going to keep going down, and it's more preventatives. Number 2, one of the conditions for disbelief, or to make takfir of someone, is that they have to have done the action deliberately. Deliberately. So not by accident. Everyone knows this. So again, I'm summarizing a lot of what the Shaykh is writing, so it becomes easy. So by accident. So, on purpose. He has to do it on purpose. Therefore, our preventative is accident. Okay, so let's say somebody said something by accident. Is it kufr? No, it's by accident. He didn't intend that. So Allah doesn't hold us accountable for our mistakes. Alhamdulillah. Allah says we don't hold you account for the mistakes that you make. But however, whatever you do deliberately with your heart, that's held accountable. Surah Ahzab, Ayah 5. So let's give the example now of the hadith in Bukhari and Muslim. The man who, traveling with his camel, has all his food on it, all his property, everything he needs, and then he loses the camel and he's sleeping under the tree. And then it comes to him after a while when he thinks he's finished, he's going to die. Again, the example of tawbah, right? Allah loves and is so more pleased with your repenting than this man when he finds the camel. The man out of happiness says, Allahumma anta abdi wa ana rabbuk. Astaghfirullah. He's so happy, he mixed up the words. Allah, you're my servant, I'm your Lord. He's so happy, he just mixed up the words. So this person, is he excused? Yes, it was a mistake. Why? Because he's so happy, he didn't know what he said. So someone says something, it could be sabaq al-lisan, by accident, slip of the tongue. We don't even say, oh, look what he said. Today we do this, right? Soundbite, this guy said. Just listen more. He made fixed what he said. See, people like some people are out there, they have sur aghrad. They want to just ruin people. Sabaq al-lisan, there's even a way to fix it. You just, better the ghalat. And you just change the mistake the next time you say it, right after. But today we cut a little bit and say, this guy said kufr. And you hear the 1 second and say, astaghfirullah, look at this guy. This is very dangerous today, guys. Imagine making takfir of people. So what we have to do is, if we understand there's such thing as mistakes, we have to ensure it was a mistake, not deliberate. And obviously, mistake and deliberation are two different things. Another example will be someone, scholars say that's Allah's wording. Another mistake, and remember we said that one of the mistakes is not joking, right? Joking is not part of the mistakes because joking comes from a different place. Another example, someone who fell into a mistake, a scholar or do the ijtihad in an issue of aqeedah, and he made a mistake. And that mistake will lead him to something which will be disbelief. Scholars say this kind of ijtihad is invalid, right? It's wrong. But if the scholar genuinely strove in an issue and he made a mistake to the point that he would necessitate that statement, is a questionable mark in terms of the aqeedah, the scholars say that it's forgiven. Because these are mistakes from aqeedah, from ijtihad. Obviously, if he said the scholars won't do ijtihad, it's something clear-cut, and they don't make mistakes in ijtihad, is something which is wadih. No one makes mistakes like I'm talking about. Masa'il Imaan, which are furu'i, subsidiary, not usuli maybe, or they did ijtihad in a particular issue which they didn't have the text to, and they made a mistake in aqeedah. Hence, when we see the scholars, someone that they made mistakes in aqeedah, from the earlier scholars, we pardon them. Why? Because scholars understand that person, he made a mistake from ijtihad. He never actually believed from his other statement that was the way of the truth will be this way. Because maybe he made ijtihad in a place where he shouldn't make ijtihad maybe, or maybe he made ijtihad and he made a mistake. And remember, when it comes to Bab al-Aqeedah, where is ijtihad even done? That's important. Where do you make ijtihad in Aqeedah anyways? It's always in the dhanniyat, right? The issues of speculation, the second subsidiary issues of Aqeedah. Not the usul issues. Aqeedah is agreed upon. There's ijma' on Aqeedah. Scholars, when they have subsidiary issues, they do ijtihad sometimes. Why? Because they may look at the text, it's not qat'i, it's dhanni, it's not definitive, it's speculative. Or the text is absent. It's important to know, is there such thing as ijtihad fil aqeedah? Yes. But those are subsidiary issues in the absence of a text or when a text is not clear. Okay, brothers, it's important to know because today, if we don't know this stuff, someone comes and doing ijtihad. You know what, Bab al-Aqeedah? And he's doing ijtihad for usul. With his nas wadih, clear text. There's no ijtihad when there's text, right? That's a rule. So we're not talking about someone who came and then the clear text is, for example, Yawm al-Qiyamah, there's going to be mizan. Yawm al-Qiyamah, there's going to be hawd. And someone comes, there's no hawd, no mizan. No, this is usuli issue, clear out issue. This is issue, there's no ijtihad here, it's clear text. We're talking about the subsidiary issues. So sometimes scholars, they make mistakes like this, and then scholars will exempt them. Why would they exempt them? Because they'll say, first of all, it was ijtihad fil aqeedah and an issue which is not clear-cut, or the evidence wasn't present to the shaykh, maybe when he was making the ijtihad, but when it comes to the usul, he believes in the general usul. So this is the way the scholar will deal with it. So the second rule is, someone has to not make a mistake, someone has to do something deliberately of takfir, not a mistake. And when it comes to issues of aqeedah, that's why the scholars, they have rahmah, they have mercy. And they're not like others. Ahl al-Sunnah wal Jama'ah, we're not hasty to kick people out of the Sunnah. We're not. And unfortunately, other groups and sects, they're more hasty to not only kick people out of the Sunnah, they declare them kafir. I don't know if you had time, I'll show you how the other groups who are other than Ahl al-Sunnah wal Jama'ah deal with Ahl al-Sunnah wal Jama'ah, how they do, what they call them, what they think about them. With Ahl al-Sunnah wal Jama'ah, we seek pardon for even some of them, and others we declare them to be individuals but still Muslims. Big difference. So here now the Shaykh moves to the third one, which is the last one, which is someone has to have done the action voluntarily. So someone did it with ikhtiyar, with choice. Not somebody who did an act of kufr being forced. And what does that mean? Someone forced you, threatened your life. If you don't say it, you're out of it, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to harm you. I'm going to take your wealth and you're going to harm your family. So we know in the chapter fiqh, there is a chapter of the people who are in duress. So if someone's compelled, then that statement he said or the action did is not bounded against their Iman, provided that the Iman is still in their heart and they believe. But they just did it in their tongue or the action to get away from the punishment. So that's what scholars say, and the end of the Nawaqid al-Islam is there, right? The person who's exempted, one of them, he mentioned the Shaykh, and one of the only ones he mentions there is the person who's been compelled. And why? Because Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, Hadith Abdullah ibn Abbas, إِنَّ اللَّهَ تَجَاوَزَ لِي عَنْ أُمَّتِي الْخَطَأَ وَالنِّسْيَانَ وَمَا اسْتُكْرِهُ عَنْهُ عَلَيْهِ وَمَا اسْتُكْرِهُ عَلَيْهِ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has pardoned my ummah from that which they've done with mistake, out of forgetfulness, and that which they have done out of duress. Someone compelled me. These three are what we just mentioned now. Khata, and also you can add to khata, mistake, you can also add nisyan. Forgetfulness is also can be also a pardon. And then, obviously, but usually, right, if someone is forgetful, we're saying, but mistake and forgetfulness together, then last one, mustukrihu alayhi, someone's being compelled, and then we said knowledge. So, the proof for this, Hadith Ammar ibn Yasir, the story behind the tafsir in the Quran. Man kafara ba'di imanihi, whoever disbelieved after his iman. What did Allah say about such a person? Huh? The one who disbelieved after having iman, illa man ukriha wa qalbuhu mutma'inna bil iman. He's been forced with the iman of justice, and his heart is full of iman. However, whoever the kufr has spread in his chest, so that qissah to Ammar ibn Yasir is proof. Because the scholars, they mentioned there's some weakness in the chains, but the scholars, for the most part, narrated in the tafasir and the books of seerah and tariq. Ammar ibn Yasir, we know his Ma'ari Yasir, who were slaves, and his mom Sumayya was the first shaheed, radiallahu anha, fil Islam. And so when they didn't let him go, Ammar ibn Yasir, to leave the Quraysh and to go with Rasulullah unless he said some derogatory statements against Rasulullah. So he did that, and then he freed himself. When he came to Rasulullah crying, Nabi Sallallahu asked him what happened. He told him, he said, how was your heart? And he told him, it's full of Iman. And the Prophet said that if he told you do it again, and he forced you the second time, then do it as you did. Which means that was an acceptable excuse. And for our own benefit, one hadith, the Prophet said, Ammar ibn Yasir, he's full of Iman from head to toe. Head to toe, brothers. Imagine someone, the Prophet said, his Iman is full. And yet he was worried because what he did. So Nabi told him, cleared him, because he just said it out of force. So this is different, right? Obviously, if somebody's in that situation, we're not going to make a ruling on them. Someone's taken hostage, and they're going to say, if you say, you're a kafir, I'm going to kill you. The person has all the right to say that in his tongue, but not his heart. But scholars also talk about, what if someone chooses not to? Say, I'm going to die shaheed, someone might say, yeah? Is that allowed? Yes, scholars say it is. It's allowed, but that's a higher level, not wajib. It's a higher level, right? Because not everyone can do that. For example, some people stand firm. Example, we know Imam Ahmed the Khalq al-Quran. How come Imam Ahmed didn't take the excuse that everyone else did? Because Imam Ahmed was going to stand for the truth as an imam, because he's going to take the higher route. So scholars, they mention some narrations, don't disbelieve or commit shirk, even if they burn you, even if they cut you. You carry those hadith to mean this. That's a higher level. If someone said, say kufr, or you're going to die, you say, no, I'm going to stand for tawheed, and you die, that person has done a great act. قُتِلَ دُونَ دِينِهِ فَهُوَ شَهِيد. Whoever dies for his religion is shaheed. But if someone else said on his tongue and didn't believe and ran away, no one's going to say this guy's a kafir, right? God's that person that did something which is allowed. That's the difference. Okay, because if we don't have these, someone will come and say, what kind of Islam is this? No, what are you talking about? Ammar ibn Yasir, you have doubt about his Islam? It's important to understand that. So now, if you understand the conditions, what are the preventatives, the mawani'? Shaykh mentions 4, right? So, and they're just like in comparison to the preventatives, the conditions, but there's one additional one. So one of the examples, scholars they mention, is ignorance, and we already talked about that. Ignorance is a preventative. It's mani', it's a preventative. So if someone has ignorance, then you can't make a ruling on them until that's taken away for kufr and takfir. Number 2, mistake. And we already explained that, the hadith about the man, Hadith Bukhari Muslim, the hadith of the man and the issue of tawbah. So he said out of mistake. Number 3, someone was compelled out of duress. Right? And we just explained that one too. So what's the 4th one? Scholars add a 4th one, and it's a very important one. Su' ta'wil. Someone has a bad interpretation or false interpretation of a text. That's the 4th one. That's a very important one. Somebody did an act of kufr, or something like it would be kufr, a statement or action, but from a bad interpretation. They interpret the deen wrongly that led them that way. And scholars exempt such a person until the person, the scholar and the person of knowledge will take away the shubuhat that the person has. You do take away the doubts, so you do the iqamat hujjah. So how does this work? Scholars say the person who has a false interpretation, in reality he's ignorant. So he goes to category 1. He's ignorant, right? Because if he had wrong interpretation of the Quran and Sunnah, he wouldn't have, if he had the right interpretation, he would have said what he said. Here now we get the secret why the ulama did not make takfir of many of the jama'at. Why the ulama salaf didn't make takfir Mu'tazila? Mu'tazila, brothers, do they say kufr? Absolutely. What do the Mu'tazila believe? Huh? They believe in asma, they don't believe in any sifat. So this is kufr, and they deny all of Allah's sifat. But the ulama never made takfir of them. Imam Ahmed in Khalq Quran, he never made takfir of any of his opponents. Ibn Abdul Qaadir and those debating him, he didn't make takfir of them. Because Imam Ahmed understood, they didn't understand him. They didn't have understanding the hujjah. Imam Ahmed debated them definitively, right? Still, he didn't make takfir. Look at this example. How about the Ash'ira? Did they say kufr, brothers? Yes, they have also a lot of issues. More than many of us might know. Scholars say what they're saying would necessitate kufr. But no one made takfir al-Ash'ira because they have a lot of ta'wilat, a lot of false interpretation. That only a few, right, people, or because not a few, because scholars and people of great knowledge could be able to deal with that. Because if you try to, for example, take on some of their doubts, some of us will be confused. Because it's not easy, some of the stuff they're going to bring you. So obviously that meant the scholars understood that because they have all these doubts, out of precaution, there are people of misguidance and innovation, but not disbelievers. How about the Khawarij? The scholars are different if they're kafir or not. Right? Scholars actually different. Salaf and Khalafa, past and present. What's the hukum in the Khawarij? And it's important to know that one is a little bit different. They didn't excuse them because they're different. They don't have the shubuhat that other groups have. And also some of them they said yes and some said no. But look at the way the ulama excused this. Imagine today someone comes to you, he says something ridiculous, outrageous. You have to ask him, why did you say that? And they might tell you, but it says in the Quran. You see, when you hear that, you're like, oh, this person is confused. You need to explain to him, this is not what the Quran means. What dalil dhalik? What's the proof for this? Let's bring the proof now. And it's important because Shaykh Islam Ibn Taymiyyah also, when you see the way he debates with Ahl Bid'ah in his time, you can see he never declared them kuffar. All these groups that he's debating with, right, except for the ones that the scholars, they declare, like the Jahmiyyah and others. Let's give the story. The scholars, they mention the incident to show that this false interpretation, right, it happened in the time of the Rasul's time of Sahabi, Umar ibn Khattab. Musannaf Ibn Abi Shaybah, Musannaf Abdul Razak, he brings a narration, which is authentic, of Qudama ibn Mad'un. The Sahabi Qudama ibn Mad'un al-Badri. A Sahabi who was earlier in Islam. Him, radiallahu anhu, he made a mistake. Alright, in the interpretation of Khamar. He believed that Khamar was, or at that time he believed it was halal. Khamar was halal, and this issue became an issue which was raised to Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu. Okay? When Umar received the issue, Umar asked him, why are you saying that? And he brought him the ayah, Surah Ma'idah, ayah 93. ليس على الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات جناح فيما طعموا إذا ما اتقوا وآمنوا وعملوا الصالحات ثم اتقوا وآمنوا ثم اتقوا وأحسنوا. Allah says, وليس على الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات جناح. There's no harm in those who believe in Allah and who do righteous deeds. Any blame for that which they've eaten before. So he's talking about what the issue was. Some of the people before, Ashab Badr or those earlier, who died early in Islam, before Khamr was prohibited, they drank Khamr, and they died for the sake of Allah, then they became Muslims. And Shuhada and etc., right? Ahl Jannah. But they had Khamr. So some of the Sahaba raised the issue, but they drank before and now it's haram. So Qudama's argument was that, well, those people did it, and Allah says there's no harm in what they did, as long as they believe and did righteous good deeds, so it's okay. So Umar, what did he do? He explained to him that's wrong, and he brought in the ayat to show that it's been abrogated. Okay? And this shows you Umar Khattab, what he did the Iqam Hujjah, and he removed the Shubhat, the doubt. This is why scholars say a false interpretation can exempt someone for something haram. Because what is Qudama saying there? Making Khamr halal, isn't that kufr? As an actual act? It's called istihlal, right? Make something halal which is haram, or haram which is halal. But did he do it deliberately? No, that's the difference. He actually thought it was allowed because of this ayah. So today, when we look at people, there are people out there who do this. You tell them, what do you believe? They tell you something wrong. You say, why are you saying that? They say, Allah said, Rasulullah said. So now what do you have to do? You got to dispel that interpretation, dispel that interpretation. Do the Qamatu Hujjah, Fahm al-Hujjah, and you make sure the person understands. If they still don't follow, then again, your person is qualified to do that, and the other preventatives their conditions are met, then yes, then the ruling can be given, but not so quickly. Like we said, some of the Salaf, they understood that these other groups at their time were so misguided, but they didn't understand the evidences. So out of precaution, that's Ahlul Sunnah and Jama'ah, they're careful about takfir. Not like today, brothers and sisters, people going online in the YouTube chats, making takfir of everyone under the sun. Stuff that I've seen this way, I couldn't even believe. Some people, they don't even know what they're doing. So ignorant, they have no idea. Sometimes you wonder if they're bots or not. Some of these people are really robots or those bots, if they're really people or not. But you can actually believe they are. Someone did this, فَهُوَ كَافِرٌ. MashaAllah. They just skip, no shurut, wala muwana. That's it. And you'll be surprised by this. This is people going to popular people now. I mean, you have to be able to stand up and say, what kind of manhaj is that? Illa manhaj wa? Whose manhaj is that? Illa al-Khawarij. You see, if you don't connect the dots, you're going to think, well, this guy's right. He has a proof. He has a video. What's that going to do, brothers? He has a video and what do you do with the shurut al-muwana? Nothing. You just bring me a video, you don't even know where you got it from. You don't even know where you got it from. We've got to wake up, brothers and sisters. Today, some of us, we got to put on our thinking caps. Where's the timestamps? Where are the due process and diligence? We're not born yesterday. Someone's going to bring you a statement, a tweet. Then that's wrong what he said, if he said that. And what's this have to do with your hukm against the kufr? You're making a hukm. You're going up and beyond what happened. So this is why today, if we don't know this stuff, we're looking at these people, mashallah, they have a proof. No. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, what did he say about the Khawarij? He said, يَقْتُلُونَ أَهْلُ الْإِسْلَامِ وَيَتْرُكُونَ أَهْلُ الْأَوْثَانِ. They're going to kill the Muslims and they're going to leave alone the kuffar. Why? Imam Qurtubi, Abu Abbas al-Qurtubi, he says, it's because they make takfir of the kuffar first, the Muslims, then they kill them. How did they kill the Muslims? They don't just kill them. First they make the takfir of them, then they make halal of their blood, then they take care of them. Pay attention to this, brothers. This is important. This is the problem we have today. So many people walking around, if you tell them, well, what's going on here? It doesn't even know if something is ikhtilaf on it, it's mujma' alayh, he has no idea. He just says, this is a kufr. In his, mashallah, mind. Because for those kind of people, the world is maybe black and white. There's no such thing as any principles. It's just, this is wrong and that's it. Even we said, we're talking about things which we agree on kufr. There's still a process. Let alone something which is a khilaf. And that's what scholars say the difference between ta'wil, a good ta'wil, and a wrong ta'wil. A bad ta'wil is the one we're talking about. A ta'wil which is valid is one which the sharia permitted with its conditions. And that's why you see that sometimes scholars, when they talk about ta'wil, there's a good one and a bad one. So this last one is an important rule. Why? Because when we find somebody doing something wrong, could be some imam, could be some da'i, could be a random person, don't be so quick to just make a judgment. Think to yourself deeply. What did happen? What's the hukm on this amal awalan? Let's go research it. What's the ruling on this? Is it agreed upon or is it clear-cut kufr? Is it nas, wadih? What's going on here? Number two, this person who did it, did he know anything about the deen or not? And you see, if we wish good for people, what do? When we know the issue is clear, this is very dangerous. We go and we give them nasiha, we try to go in the Qamatu Hujjah. You want to fix the situation, not corrupt it. Ahlul Sunnah Jama'ah or Muslihun, right? We rectify, we don't cause corruption. Allahu ya'lam mufsid min muslih, mufsid min muslih. Allah is the one who's corrupting versus the one who's correcting. Some people today say, I'm trying to correct the evil. No, you're making more evil. Because what you're doing, instead of correcting the person, you're pushing them further into that. By not helping to explain to them. Not actually being serious and trying to take the issue at hand. And also being careful. So the Shaykh, after he mentioned all of these things, he also brings a few other things too, right, and add to this. And some of it has to do with, for example, the categorizations of someone who's being compelled. And again, some of it we mentioned, some he goes into more detail, so inshallah we'll just kind of move on because of the time. And one more thing we want to mention, added to this, is that these issues the scholars talk about, they talk about it because we said before it's connected to Iman, and it's one of the issues that leads us to the problems we have today. Because people skip the study of Iman, then where are they? We're in the book, right? This is where we are in our communities today. MashaAllah, we're skipping. People skipping the wudu and the salah, and then the bab qadaya. MashaAllah, then the book of qada and rulings, and that's what hudud. MashaAllah, this is what's happening in our community, brothers and sisters. When we see this, we must be concerned. Our Muslim community, when we look at our community, we have to be careful what's going on. We have to learn knowledge the right way. If you see somebody who's busy himself with something above his pay grade, you know that person is either misguided or ignorant, or maybe no one helped him, taught him the right way. This is not how you learn deen. Or someone, mashallah, is talking about these issues of takfir and kufr and hukum and dawla, and they don't know the Masa'il Iman. Well, what are you doing then? You want to get an equation or conclusion, and you don't have the tools. No, this person needs to be helped and taught. So when we look at these issues, it's good for us to know too. Not that because we're trying to do this. I'm not going around now and again, now we're a little bit more knowledgeable now in this issue and say, now I have something to know. Or our job is when you see people who don't know better, you correct them, you teach them. Okay, there's a such thing as preventatives. You see, and when you do this, now you're actually helping that person who maybe himself was misguided. Shaykh also mentions a good point about the issue of taqleed and disbelief. And someone who made a mistake by way of taqleed, blind following. Okay? So the scholars say that it is one of the preventatives. Someone's blind following, but with two conditions. Right? So someone mentioned two conditions. That number one, the person who's blind following. The person who's blind following, is he blind following should be blind following someone of Iman, those who believe in Allah as Messenger and who are Muslims. Right? So if someone's blind following the people of Islam, right, in terms of him being a Muslim, and then he's following this is different than someone who is blind following something in disbelief. So we're talking here about a Muslim blind following someone else who's wrong. A Muslim blind following somebody else who's wrong. He's a Muslim, so we can exempt him inshallah because he still has Iman, but he made a mistake by blind following someone who had a belief which was kufr. Second condition, أن يكون غير متمكن من علم ومعرفة الحق. It should be someone ignorant, not someone firmly in knowledge. So for someone to be excused, let's say someone in the village. Right, let's imagine today, people in villages, right? People far from the place of knowledge. They may blind follow the local sheikh, who might be also wrong. What do we say about them? Well, two conditions to excuse them. Are they Muslims? Do they believe in Allah as Messenger? And number two, are they people of ignorance, not people of deep knowledge who have the access? If they are, then inshallah they can be excused. That's a rahmah, guys. Today, we have to remember, brothers and sisters, how many Muslims in the world? 1.9 billion, something like this. How many du'at and shuyukh do you think there are? Is it enough? Is there enough? Not even close. Some of us, we think so, right? We think there's so many shuyukh. Brother, 1.9 billion Muslims. What do you mean? How many? We have enough shuyukh to cover all that ground? And to spread, we need more and more. We need so much more. So some people are living, they still have not got the message. Many things today we thank Allah for knowing. Just here. In our masjid, so many things we take for granted we know about. They never heard about. So we have rahmah for them because we say these are ignorant people, the blind following a misguided person. And Shaykh Al-Bani often will talk about these issues when they brought to him, and he gave the Arabic parable that if the father or the person, the owner of the house is playing the drum, don't get angry when everyone else is dancing. That's an Arab parable method. If the head of the household is playing the drum, don't get upset when the rest of them are dancing. He's wrong and they're following. Khalas. That's what it is. So if the sheikh, for example, some misguided sheikh in a qarya, in a valley, or a village, is telling everybody wrong things and they're just following, don't get angry at the one who's following that guy didn't know any better. You see? But imagine you can have this knowledge. You may come and say to somebody, well, it's their fault. Why don't they go on the internet? What internet? They don't have one. Or maybe you tell yourself, you should ask the sheikh, he did. And the sheikh told him that. Right? Someone went to the sheikh, he said it's allowed. Istighatha, or go to the qubur and make a dua, it's totally fine. See, we have to be more mature and understand that there are some differences between that person and the person who had the knowledge. So alhamdulillah for these principles, because they come handy, especially when we hear about things and we learn about things. Because the goal of the Muslims is to have mercy. Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, people have mercy. People have mercy. And the more we have knowledge, the more merciful we are. The Shaykh, after he mentioned this discussion, and we talked about the kufr already, so the next chapter the Shaykh talks about the chapters, the issues of kufr, the categories. We spoke about it. So we're going to move to the next chapter, nifaq, hypocrisy. And the Shaykh is going to finish the book by talking about these topics. For example, what is hypocrisy? Next chapter, what is shirk? And the chapter after that, nawaqid al-Islam, the nullifiers. So inshallah, we'll try to cover quickly what he talks about here. What's nifaq? He says nifaq is to take it more nafaq, which then he says, nifaq is the person is called a munafiq, the one who hides disbelief and makes apparent Islam. The one who hides disbelief and makes apparent Islam. This is a munafiq. And again, he talks about in the terminology, where is it coming from? So here the scholars, they talk about the idea of nifaq is someone who's hiding disbelief Or could we say hiding some forms of wickedness, but is making apparent good and a deen. And the reason why you can say fisk, wickedness also, because there's more than one category of nifaq. There's more than one. So now the Shaykh, when he mentions this nifaq, what is this? When we say nifaq or munafiq, we're talking about somebody who's doing that. So nifaq is hiding disbelief and making apparent Islam. Then there's two types, he says. One which is connected to wickedness, which is called nifaq al-asghar, minor nifaq, minor hypocrisy. And the second one, nifaq al-akbar, major hypocrisy. Very important, brothers and sisters, to understand this terminology. Because when the Sahabi is nifaq, what are they talking about? You see? Someone says so-and-so Sahabi called another person in their time munafiq. What did he mean? So Charles says first, the first category is called minor nifaq. And that is one of the things Rasul told, one of the three. The hadith kadhib, one who speaks, he lies. With the wa'ad akhlaf, right? When he gives a promise, he breaks it. With it to be the khan, and when he's giving a trust, he betrays the trust. These qualities are called the minor nifaq. Scholars call these the qualities of nifaq. Person has iman, but he's got the qualities of people of nifaq. It's a difference, right? Then someone who is the one we know, when we talk about nifaq, we're talking about disbelief here, belief here, outward. But the nifaq that's minor is the one who has some of the qualities of the munafiq. Scholars say that the person still has faith, but he has wickedness, because those are wicked qualities. Ibn Hajar says that the Prophet limited this hadith to three qualities, because most of the bad qualities of the nifaq are revolving around them, right? About lying, deceit, betrayal, etc. So the Shaykh says, for example, if we look at the deen comes with qawl, fi'l, wa niyyah. Islam comes to teach us actions, statements, and intentions. Whereas this hadith teaches us that when they speak, they lie, so they have bad speech. And then they have bad actions, they betray, and they have bad intentions because they say a promise they don't want to keep. So you see that? Islam teaches us three good qualities, and then the munafiq has the opposite. We're supposed to tell the truth, he's lying. We're supposed to keep promises, breaking them, right? By intending to do on purpose. He has, for example, he's supposed to do good deeds, he's doing betrayal. Now, does it mean that's only qualities of nifaq? No, scholars have written books. Qualities of the munafiq. A good book in English, Imam Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah has a book. I think Dar al-Sunnah translated it. And in the Birmingham, it's a red cover. It's called The Qualities of the Hypocrite. Right? Yeah? Characteristics of the Hypocrite, Imam Ibn Qayyim. It's a nice book. It summarizes some of it. And some of the early scholars have bigger books. Why is it good to read those books? So you want to avoid those qualities. Right? Another example, when you argue, you say bad language. Well, many of us, we have to be mindful. We know when you argue, you cross a territory. Now you're in like no man's land. Because you're no longer defending the haqq or anything, defending yourself. So when you're going over there, you win the argument hook or crook, right? You're going to say whatever you have to say to win. So most of us, we know, we get angry. May Allah forgive us. We say things we're not supposed to do. That's also quality of nifaq. So we learn the qualities of nifaq. Does it make you munafiq? No. It makes you have a quality of munafiq. So some scholars call it nifaq al-amali, the nifaq of actions, or nifaq al-asghar. Why is that important? A person who has these qualities, can we pray over them? Yes, he's still a Muslim. Can this person, can I still interact with him? Yes, he's still a Muslim. Second category, nifaq al-akbar. This is the one who the Sahaba Salaf spoke about, who had disbelief in their heart but pretended to be a Muslim. That's the surah Munafiqun is about. Those ones in Surah Baqarah, Surah Nisa, all these different surahs about that. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, in Mecca, there was only Muslim and Kafir. When he came to Medina, it was three, Muslim, Kafir, Munafiq. The Munafiq are those people. That's what the Sahaba meant. So the term can be used equivocally, two different ways. We have to be careful, brothers and sisters. Some people today come and they say that guy's a munafiq. So astaghfirullah. You didn't say, you didn't qualify, what do you mean? So you see, you're saying that statement unqualified, it's very dangerous. Because if I don't know any better, I say, well, subhanAllah, he's a kafir. I say, no, he's not kafir. So see, you got to say, this person has the qualities of nifaq. But if you say this guy's a munafiq akbar, you mean he's a kafir. Munafiq i'tiqadi, belief. So scholars say this is very careful to be careful of this, because when we read the Quran, with the Sunnah, this is what the scholars are talking about. And then sometimes the scholars differ. When some hadith calls something nifaq, scholars analyze which one, major or minor. Right? So this is important to understand. So in the Quran, when the munafiqun are talked about, which nifaq do they have? Which hypocrisy? Major or minor? Major, because in Surah Munafiqun, what's the first ayah? يَا جَاءَكَ الْمُنَافِقُونَ قَالُوا نَشْهَدُ إِنَّكَ لَرَسُولُ اللَّهِ. We bear witness, Ya Rasulullah. Allah knows that you're Rasulullah. However, the munafiqun are kadibun. They're liar. ومن الناس من يقول آمنا بالله وباليوم الآخر وما هم بمؤمنين. See? وما هم بمؤمنين. They don't believe. They say they are. That's the nifaq. They pray salah. They do go for even the battles. But what are they doing? They're always plotting against Islam. We know the munafiqs try to kill Rasulullah. They compiled, they compromised by allying with enemies. That's the nifaq. Amal i'tiqadi, the real one. So some of the qualities of nifaq, scholars say, what are those major qualities of nifaq? So we know the minor qualities. What are some of the major qualities? Shaykh says, for example, a major quality is the difference between the apparent, the internal, and the external. So the difference between the external and internal is one of the qualities of major nifaq. Right? For example, they believe in public and in private, they disbelieve. That's one of their qualities. Okay, so that doesn't mean that, for example, I'm good in public and when I'm private, not the best. No, I'm still a Muslim because I didn't go to kufr. I just have deficiency iman. Or someone, for example, he smiles inside and doesn't smile at home. No, it's not a munafiq, this person. I know this is not. So some people think that because the asr is ikhtilaf. Some will say those guys. No, there's time for time. For example, maybe when you're with in the masjid with the community, your iman's going up. When you're not with the community, your iman's a little bit lower. That's fine. But not, of course, you shouldn't go lower than that, but towards something wrong. Number two, second quality, they hate Islam and its people. And that's a defined term, quality. They hate Islam and its people. That's the nifaq. I'tiqadi. They hate it. And Allah talks about so many ayahs, وَكَرِهُ. They dislike, Allah says. وَلَا يَأْتُونَ الصَّلَاةَ إِلَّا وَهُمْ كُسَالَى. Why they come to salah lazy? Because they don't want to pray. They hate it. وَلَا يُنْفِقُونَ إِلَّا وَهُمْ كَارِهُونَ. They don't give the money except that they're being compelled to. Muslims like this, right? And even if we pray salah lazy, most of us, we know we're wrong for being lazy. And we're not praying out of laziness because we hate salah, because we need to train and to do better. Another quality, mawalatul kuffar. They ally with the kuffar against the Muslims. Okay? Deliberately. And not just that they join them or they work with them. They're doing it for what reason? For the kufr to go up and Islam to go down. That's a big difference, brothers and sisters, between somebody who has allyship with the kuffar for dunya reasons or other maybe circumstances. We must investigate. But this one I'm talking about, they love the kufr to go up and Islam to go down. No one's going to do this except for someone who's not a Muslim. So the munafiqun at the time of Rasulullah, that's what they were doing. Right? For example, they built Masjid Dirar. When they built this masjid, what was the intention? They built their own masjid, right? Munafiqin. They said, Ya Rasulullah, come pray in our masjid. 2 rak'ahs to bless the masjid. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, then here we see revelation of these people, they only build the masjid to cause tafriq, separation of the ummah, and corruption. وَالْفُرْقَ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ, differings from shaitan, khilaf al-shar. They wanted to cause corruption. So people don't go to Masjid Quba, Masjid Rasul. They want it. So Rasul told them to burn. He ordered the companions to burn down that masjid. Someone said, burn down that masjid? You can burn the masjid? No, you're not allowed, but this is not a masjid. The way we understand, it's dirar. It's not a masjid for Allah. وَأَنَّ الْمَسَاجِدِ لِلَّهِ. What kind of masjid is that? It's not for Allah. It's a masjid built, imagine, Allah says, "Hum kusala." You think they're praying in there? Many of us say, "Oh, they build a masjid to pray." Hum kusala, they don't even pray. They don't care, they pray to show. Allah says in the Quran, they do good deeds. Yura'un al-nas. They're always looking to see people look at them. And then when there's battle, they make excuses to get out of it. Right? They do, this is the munafiqun, guys. So imagine, Rasulullah, he knew them, he was patient with them, and yet, right, they were trying so much. Another quality, Shaykh says, they tried to harm the believers and Rasulullah. And Shaykh mentions many more. You can read about it again in these different books. Ibn Qayyim's book is very nice. Shaykh mentions here in this book up to 9 different qualities. And I think it's good to read about some of these qualities because we don't want them as Muslims. Okay? One of the qualities also he mentions that they make lems, they belittle, insult the believers, make them and defame them. We shouldn't have that quality with us. وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ يَلْمِزُكَ فِي الصَّدَقَاتِ They make fun of you regarding the sadaqat, etc. So I encourage brothers for this section to please read the book about Imam Ibn Qayyim, rahimahullah, because time is limited. It has a lot of the good qualities to talk about why and what is nifaq and how to avoid it, both amali, the actions, and the i'tiqad, the beliefs. Here now the Shaykh will get into the next topic, which is shirk. And so there's 2 more chapters left in this book for finishing. So we'll just do maybe just the beginning of what is intended by shirk, and we'll stop for any questions. He says the meaning of shirk and its types. And this one, brothers and sisters, is worthy of a great study. I mean, books have been written, scholars and continue to study and write and to categorize and to deeply investigate shirk. Shirk is the greatest sin ever someone could commit. And therefore, it got the attention of the scholars deeply. What is it? What are its categories? How to avoid it? What are its means? What is its punishments? Who are the people who do it? They're so interested to avoid this shirk. Because we know if you come to Allah, Yawm al-Qiyamah, with Tawheed, no shirk, there's all hope for you to go to Jannah. But imagine someone who fell into shirk, major or minor, it's big trouble. Even the minor ones, scholars, they consider it as something heavy, despite not being the same as major. So Shaykh says, when you say shirk in the technical meaning, shirk is إثبات الشريك لله في بعد ما يختص به. So shirk, it means إثبات, to affirm, sharikun, right, a partner, إثبات الشريك, to affirm a sharik, a partner, لله, for Allah, في بعد ما يختص به, and that which is specific for Allah. So scholars, when we talk about shirk, they investigate what's the best definition. أَتَجْعَلُ لِلَّهِ نِدًّا. That's an example, to make a partner with Allah. And some said, well, this could include major or minor. And so they kept looking. Someone said the best definition is to associate a partner with Allah in that which is specific for Allah. That's the condition there, a qualifier. فِي بَعْدِ مَا يَخْتَصُ بِهِ. That which is specific for Allah, from His specific specific rights of ibadah, of lordship, rubiyyah, and asma wa sifat like this. So just like Tawheed, 3 categories, all the categories of shirk can be brought into the 3. So shirk fi rububiyyah, shirk fi uluhiyyah, shirk fi asma wa sifat. And the scholars see shirk as many categories. How many? In one hadith, Rasulullah said that riba is 70 odd different branches, and shirk is likewise. There's many, brothers. There's so many. So scholars say focus on what? Their principles, focus on the examples, and try to learn as much as you can. And make dua to Allah to protect you. Because you might not know all of it, but at least you know the foundations of it, and it's awesome. So we'll talk about that inshallah, not next week, and the week next, the next 2 weeks we won't be in a class. The week after that, inshallah, we will continue and we'll finish this book. And I also encourage the brothers to pay attention to what we're learning in these classes as fundamentals to help our community. Basics, right? But they're not basics because so many Muslims might not be aware of them. Muslims who are practicing their deen. So it's important for us to try our best. You learn something about Iman, you share it. Your mind, you share it in WhatsApp forward. Because the da'iyah, the scholars say, always begins with Tawheed al-Aqidah. Right? Just like we share different hadith, stuff is coming on, Ashura's coming up. This is all good. What else you should be sharing? What's Tawheed? What's Shirk? What's Masa'il Iman? Like this, yes, we have to. Because we have to make sure our families heard the message and we're teaching them. We don't want them to be, they never heard. And inshallah, you studied. Anyone has any quick questions? Inshallah, before the salah. Yeah. So, Iqamah to Hujjah, established book for the commoners and the scholars alike. It depends on what issue someone is discussing. Some issues we said are so clear-cut. It's something everyone knows. So there's not too much that needs to be said except that this person goes against something which is clear-cut, like in the sky and the deen. Everyone knows it. So that person is already exposing himself by going against it. But many times you notice that some of the issues that people of misguidance will talk about, they're not so clear-cut. They could be deeper. There could be a different nature of shubuhat. So therefore, if someone has the capacity to clarify it, they should do it. But otherwise, get someone who can and not engage in it. Because that person may be the person who has bad interpretation and then confuse you. Incidentally, you're trying to help them and then they confuse you. And it's important for us when we're doing da'wah also to know where these things are coming from, these certain downs, so you can also be better prepared. It's like doing da'wah to a non-Muslim. If you're able to spread Islam to them, you spread that what you have of Islam. But when it comes to answering their questions about certain things, if you don't know, you just don't know, you don't get involved in that. But what's happened today is that sometimes when some of these issues now are being presented, they're getting more and more delicate and more you could say very subtle issues. So you need to have more than just enough knowledge. So it's very important though, if you do have the knowledge though, you do your job. Because again, like we said, with the shaykh, the ulama, the du'a, there are not so many as many of us as the regular Muslims. So we have to each do our part. That's why we teach before we make any judgments. We're always teaching. And that way, inshallah, it can spread to the person before any of this is necessary. Wallahu a'lam. Yes? So the brother's asking, at the end of the hadith, whoever has these three or four qualities, the Prophet said, he's a true munafiq. So someone may interpret now, say that means you're out of Islam. Scholars interpreted, no. It's true munafiq in this aspect. But not the true munafiq in the sense that he has disbelief in his heart. So the interpretation, that's a good point to mention. That hadith should not be misunderstood. Because someone will say that's a true munafiq. No, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam used the munafiq. Munafiq has more than one meaning. So true munafiq of what category? That's the question. So we say the first one, not the second one. So scholars explain it because we all agree that a person who lies, breaks promises, is not a kafir. No, we all agree to that. Inshallah, we'll end with this much. After salah, we'll take anything else. Any other questions? Subhanakallah bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.